Public Relations. Edward L. Bernays. 1945. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 2. Public Relations in Action. 32. An educational program for unions. The preceding chapter attempted to apply public relations principles to certain specific problems of labor management adjustment. The problems discussed were those that management faces and which management must attempt to solve. Here I shall deal with certain public relations problems that labor faces and which labor must attempt to solve. This chapter, analyzing the educational activities of trade unions, suggests that unions have an important task to perform, namely, to carry on a factual educational campaign to instruct the general public, management, and trade union members in the nature and meaning of industrial democracy. The basic purpose of this educational campaign should be to create understanding and cooperation in industrial relations, so that management and labor can work together effectively for the welfare of the nation. Public opinion on most important issues goes through a process of evolution. At first, the public sees only a small part of any issue, just as the mountain climber at first can see only the nearby valley. Then, as the result of educational activities, people are gradually induced to see more and more until, like the mountain climber on the summit, they get a full view. Today, the whole problem of industrial relations is highly visible. The educational efforts of unions have been an important factor in forcing the issue out into the open. Here I am going to discuss industrial relations from the point of view of public relations. I have had a good deal of day-to-day experience with these problems. I have made a study of business and public attitudes toward labor and public attitudes toward business. I have studied union educational programs. It appears to me that unions still have an important job of work to do, namely, to carry on an intensified educational campaign, to instruct not only the general public and management but union members as well on the bedrock facts of the struggle for industrial democracy. All of us want and expect a better life, a better hometown, a better America, with security and employment for all. We have not succeeded yet. There are violent disagreements and conflicts on how to get the better life. We are bedeviled by psychological and economic insecurities. Cynicism, disillusionment, and frustration undermine our morale. We have turned our aggressions against one another instead of a common enemy. The United States is a battlefield for ideological and group struggles, white versus Negro, native-born versus foreign, management versus labor. We must take positive action against these internal dissensions, just as we are trying to take positive action in the face of international war. The most important of these internal struggles is between management and labor. Industrial peace can be reached only if we pursue it intelligently. Together, labor and management can plan and work to realize the goals of our society. Punitive legislation will not solve our problems. The answer is education in industrial relations. The public, the employer, and the worker must know what it is all about. And labor must assume its part of this responsibility for education. What, specifically, can the educational directors of the large unions do to cope with this problem? It is essentially a public relations problem. People must want cleanliness before they will buy soap. They must want higher education before they will swarm to the colleges. Similarly, people must want unions before they are willing to support specific union goals. A public that understands what unions have done for the good of the country is going to be more open-minded and friendly to union programs. If the public does not understand the value of unions, it will be guided by prejudice, untruths, and distortions. Let us examine one progressive union's educational program and see whether it starts in at the foundation and builds up. The program follows several broad lines. First, the union educates its members to enter fully into the union's work, to develop effective and mature leadership for handling bargaining problems, to strengthen democracy within the organization, and to build union solidarity. Through these activities, the union tries to reach its goals: higher real wages, industry-wide wage agreements, wage equalization, a guaranteed annual wage, and equality for women workers. Second, the union tries to strengthen democracy in a number of ways. It fights inflation. It encourages union activity in civic and political matters, in cooperation with farmers, consumers, and others. It works for better housing, assistance to veterans, health programs, and civil liberties. The third part of its program, not announced but well understood, is a matter of selling itself to its own rank and file. Research, advertising, and public relations men in industry have the same problem. The client wants immediate visible results. As I study the union's educational activities, it seems to me that it might undertake 3 additional programs of education, so that the public will understand what the union wants and why, and be more willing to accept its goals. 1. Make the public understand the value to the country of sound unions and mature union leadership. 2. Make the employer understand the value of unions to him and make him realize that he needs to apply the science of humanics, the study of human relations, to his relations with his employees. 3. Make the worker understand our industrial system and his role in it. This type of education will lay the foundations for a broader understanding of controversial economic issues and build toward increased cooperation between labor and the other major sectors of our society. The acute need for labor to educate the public has been demonstrated in many ways. Authoritative polls again and again reveal large areas of ignorance in the matter of industrial relations. For example, more than a quarter of the people asked were unable to answer intelligently this question included in an Elmo Roper Fortune poll late in 1946. Suppose you had been acting as a referee in labor management disputes during the past 3 months, do you think your decisions would probably have been more often in favor of labor's side or more often in favor of management's side? The major reason for the American public's ignorance of matters concerning labor is its lack of factual information. The public receives its impressions of unions mainly from newspaper headlines or radio broadcasts, usually just before or in the midst of a time of controversy. Neither a union nor a management point of view expressed during controversy helps to clarify the issue. On the contrary, it merely intensifies existing attitudes. People are more receptive to facts when issues are not superheated by emotional pressures. Most people, I should say, do not know that unions have increased purchasing power and profits as well as wages and that they have been responsible for adjustments in our industrial system that have raised our standards of living. The public has little idea of what an extension of unionism might mean to our whole economy. It does not know what the advantages of unions are to the general society. It is unaware of what can be learned from the experiences of other countries. The public really does not know why some unions engage in harmful practices and others not. It has little knowledge of how the democratic process operates within unions. The 1944 Cio Constitution states that the union's objectives are to find means to establish peaceful relations with their employers, to protect and extend our democratic institutions and civil rights and liberties and thus to perpetuate the cherished tradition of our democracy. These are aims that all Americans can and will support if they know the facts on which to base their judgments. They will not have the facts unless someone makes a planned campaign to provide them. Progressive unions are in a position to do so. They can give the public the following kinds of information about unions. 1. What is a union? How does it function? Give the basic story of union organization, its history and development. Explain the structure and internal government of unions, the different kinds of unions, industrial and craft, local, national, and international, affiliated and unaffiliated. Explain clearly the facts about jurisdiction, the methods by which officers are chosen, and their duties, membership dues, and disposition of union finances. 2. What are the educational and welfare activities of unions? Cover the story of the labor press and its function. Publicize the educational activities and benefit programs of unions, such as vocational training, apprenticeship methods, labor banking, insurance, and the like. 3. What are the facts about collective bargaining? Explain this little understood term. Tell what the process actually is, what takes place, and how agreements are reached. 4. What are the facts about labor disputes in general? How do they arise? What are the principal reasons for disputes? Are there as many as the public has been led to believe? 5. What do the words mean? No small part of the campaign would be to define many of the terms commonly used in labor management discussions, but only vaguely understood by the public. A whole vocabulary needs translating. Only a small percentage of the public knows the distinction of meanings among wages, wage awards, wage practices, wage differentials, and wage stabilization, workload, work restriction, and work sharing, the closed shop, the union shop, and the open shop. My second proposal is that the unions educate the employer on the subject of unions and human relations. It can teach the employer by the same methods it uses with the public. Today, while it is generally recognized that more employers than formerly are ready to accept their social responsibility, this is by no means true of all of them, as shown by the Fortune poll quoted in the preceding chapter. As also pointed out in that chapter, employers must realize that industry is not merely business, it is a social institution as well. Industrial management requires skill in group relations. In the common interest, unions should help teach management how to work intelligently with labor. Some difficulty in industry is caused by the Victorian attitudes of certain employers, who want to recapture the hold on workers they feel they have lost because of workers' loyalty to unions. They resent and fear unions. They failed to educate their company officials on how to work with people. Some do not understand that the worker, as Philip Murray put it so succinctly, is faced with the primary problem of earning a living. But the worker also wants more than just a job, and many employers do not yet realize this. Elmo Roper showed, by authoritative polling some years ago, that in the order of their importance to him, the average American wants a sense of security, an opportunity to advance, to be treated like a human being rather than as a number on the payroll, a sense of human dignity that comes from feeling that his work is useful to society as a whole. These preferences have been confirmed by more recent polls. About half of the persons queried said they would pick a job that pays quite a low income, but which they were sure of keeping. About 1/4 said they wanted a job that pays a good income, but which they have a 50-50 chance of losing. Still fewer said they preferred a job that pays an extremely high income if you make the grade, but in which you lose almost everything if you don't. Disruptions in labor management relations arise from many reasons other than wage disputes. They arise from a continuous sense of insecurity, from real or apparent managerial unfairness in adjusting contractual relations, from the harmful effects of assembly line work, and from work and pay scales planned on an individual instead of a group basis. In many cases, these causes of workers' dissatisfaction stem directly from preconceived employer attitudes. Educational directors of a great union can help to alter these attitudes by means of an educational program aimed at the employer. They might 1. Educate employers to the place of unions in our system. 2. Acquaint employers with the data on human relations that have been gathered by universities, labor unions, foundations, and such groups as the Society for the Psychological Study of Social Issues, the Society for the Advancement of Management, and the American Academy of Political and Social Science. 3. Persuade employers to stimulate further research by industrial relations schools such as those at Cornell, Princeton, and Harvard. 4. Encourage employers to carry on technological research to improve working conditions. 5. Help management to develop new approaches to the industrial relations problem. Stabilized employment, which some organizations have found enormously beneficial, as an example. 6. Point up the importance of intelligent, honest, unbiased industrial relations personnel. 7. Urge management to encourage responsible leadership among the unions. 8. Urge employers to support housing projects, minimum wage legislation, social security, and other programs to strengthen democracy. I know the idea of educational efforts aimed at management is not new. It has been tried, sometimes with decidedly negative results. Unions have had disillusioning experiences in their attempts to persuade management to consider the union point of view, and they may feel that anyone who suggests educating management is probably starry-eyed. Management's principal fear is that if it allows labor the right to advise, labor will somehow gain complete control. Efforts to dispel this belief cannot succeed overnight, but just as the displacement of one log can break up a log jam, so the winning over of one man may win over others. The educational process, continually and persistently carried on, leads to new points of view. There are innumerable ways of reaching the attention of employers. Unions can arrange for speaking engagements before employer groups, like the Lions and the Rotary Clubs. Radio talks and speeches at public meetings will carry the message. People can be educated by word of mouth and conversation. A thought clearly expressed has a way of starting a chain reaction. Unions can reach employers by the printed word by sending clear, factual stories to newspapers and other publications, by advertisements, pamphlets, and broadsides, by using all the communications media. Intelligently written letters addressed to top management will be read. Talks by union executives to community groups reported in the newspapers will get attention. Material prepared for special groups in the community, such as women's clubs, lawyers, and the clergy, will indirectly affect the businessmen. Unions can enlist the support of colleges, foundations, progressive employers, consumer and other groups. No approach should be overlooked in carrying forward the program. Workers have a duty to the common good to help educate one of the most potent groups in American management. The third activity I propose is to educate union members in economics. Many reliable polls have proved the need of such education. For example, recent surveys of cross-sections of factory workers by the magazine Factory Management revealed that about 1/3 of the workers queried had no opinion on whether the prices a company charges for its products are too high, not high enough, or about right. About 1/3 had no opinion on their boss's pay. About half had no opinion on whether dividends were too high or too low. More than half had no opinion as to which top union leader is the most effective in getting better wages, hours, and working conditions. Few people, workers included, know much about the technical problems of business finance. Without such knowledge, the worker is handicapped in bargaining. If, however, he understands management's problems, he can bargain on a realistic basis. Some well-informed unions actually come to the aid of management when it is in financial difficulties, as the amalgamated clothing workers have done, because they know that such assistance directly benefits everyone dependent on the industry involved. Unions such as the amalgamated clothing workers have been able to take drastic steps of this kind only because their membership has been educated in the value of mutual assistance. This education had been accomplished over a long period of years by the union itself. What the amalgamated does, other unions can do. Walter Reuther has said that the test of democratic trade unionism in a democratic society must be its willingness to lead the fight for the welfare of the whole community. Management, of course, has the same obligation. Organized labor can help educate both management and workers to a realization of this obligation. Such education has one basic purpose: to create understanding, so that management and labor may work together effectively and avoid clashes. And this cooperation must come, for our system cannot stand continuous warfare.